So it might not be too hard to convince many Nigerians, particularly those who need some form of social security, that it should not be considered as an act of benevolence, but is or ought to be a fundamental human right that is supported by the Nigerian constitution. Well, how do you get the government to buy into that idea amid mounting pressure on Nigeria's public finances, which have forced the Tinubu administration to scrap fuel subsidies and to impose emergency spending controls on government largesse, though we're yet to see any empirical evidence of that? Well, according to Senator Ned Nwoko, the best thing to do is to come up with a bridging proposal, a way of reimagining this country's social security safety net. And the way to do that is to replace the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs with a national social security agency that comes directly under the office of the president. Senator Nwoko has written an open letter to President Tinubu with suggestions on how to proceed, a letter that's been widely published by several news outlets. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Senator Ned Nwoko, who is the senator representing Delta North. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
So first of all, where did these thoughts around social security come from? I mean, what pushed you to start giving it some serious thought?
Well, a combination of various factors. The first is that I understand what every responsible government should do. In any part of the world, governments are there to provide for the people. And aside providing for the people, they must also provide an enabling environment for those who want to do things on their own. So there are basic two functions for me that are so fundamental. But you see, in Nigeria, government don't think that they are responsible for the people, especially for the vulnerable. I mean, how do disabled people survive? You know, how do unemployed people survive? You know, what can the government do to make sure that there's dignity amongst this class of people? I mean, this function, this duty to provide for the people must be taken seriously. It's not just something you do by way of a show of sympathy. You know, this is what I see from the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs activities. You know, they make some billions available to the ministry, and then
they're like the government charity, basically.
No, it's worse than that. You know, what they do, basically they make some money available to them, and then they go back to their various states and choose who they like. In most cases, they just choose their friends, their families, or even steal half of the money. The money doesn't get to those that are meant to be targeted. So the first thing that must be done to achieve this, because really there's no other way to do this than to tackle it head on. The first thing that must be done is to have a database across board that is reliable, acceptable, dependable. You know, a database that captures everybody. So whether you're working, Charles, you're here to do your news thing, but your details should be on that database. So everybody who is vulnerable, everybody who is working, everybody who is a student, whatever you are doing, your details must be in that database. That way, the government will be able to understand how many millions of Nigerians are in need of basic support. I'm talking about basic support here. It's something that will be enough for people to have some food on their table at the end of every week.
In other words, to eliminate the most abject form of destitution.
We must do that.
Yeah.
We must do that.
But let's follow this systematically, because you're making some very interesting points here. What you are setting out to try to achieve is a call for the entrenchment of social security in this country, where it becomes an entitlement.
It is going to be that way. It must be an entitlement. The government must see itself as having the obligation to provide for those people. I mean, because if they don't do it, but who will? Let me put it this way. I already have a bill to this effect.
Well, I was going to ask you that question.
I do have a bill, but a bill takes some time to materialize.
So you're trying to do it as a kind of multi-headed
Precisely,
thing.
because if the president agrees with me, he can introduce this through some policy statements, or he can easily direct the leadership of National Assembly to get this done as quickly as possible. And in a week or even in 2 weeks, the law can be produced.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask you, why don't you approach it through the National Assembly?
Well, I've done that already.
Try to introduce a bill at the Senate that would cover sort of social security.
I have done that, my brother.
Right. But the other thing that would be, the argument that would be made from the other side is that it comes amid mounting pressure on Nigeria's public finances. But your thoughts are to reimagine the whole
that is where you get it wrong,
social security
that is where you get it wrong.
Safety net in this country by replacing the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs with the National Social Security Agency. Just flesh out that idea for us.
Look, people think that we don't have money in Nigeria, but we do have money in Nigeria.
But we don't have it.
All I'm talking about is that there should be some redistribution of this money. So if you're taking 5% from this first line charge from the Federation account, where money is shared every month to the local government, states, and federal government, you just take 5% of that money at source and put into that particular fund. Then every worker across board, whoever you are, you also contribute 5% of your
but isn't that
income
already happening?
Let's listen to the
in
details.
This country?
Then all other businesses. I'm looking at some kind of a plan that is meant to solve some very, very difficult problems in Nigeria.
No, I understand that.
So if we take those contributions and put in the fund, we are redistributing the funds, the money available in the system. Because if you let the money go to the local governments, go to the states, go to federal government, most of it are also...
That's why you're recommending that it be under the presidency, basically.
Yes. So if we have those steady income going into the fund that is managed not through any ministry, directly under the presidency, who wants to achieve some result, who wants to make a difference, the money will be there. And then people stop blaming chairmen, they stop blaming governors, they stop blaming the president, because the money will be there for those class of people that need money. They need money to survive, as I said before. Look, put it this way, if at the end of every week, some guy who is disabled or somebody who is unemployed gets, 50,000 naira or 100,000 naira, at least, you cut down on the possibility of frauds and of possibility of crime. Because,
and there is the important aspect of dignity, isn't there?
Of course, when people know that some money is coming, they wait. They won't become desperate as to steal or become involved in crime or whatever it is. And they know it's the entitlement. Just take, for example, when you have displaced people in various camps, they have no means of surviving other than just those handouts. But if people have their expected income every week, and there's a problem in a particular area, they can easily leave that area, go to another area, because they have their credit card, and they know that money is coming at the end of every week. They don't have to be clustered in somewhere where they are treated like animals.
And this is what happens in the West, of course.
Of course,
I mean, if you lose your job, you don't kneel down and start praying to God. You go to the unemployment office, you sign on, they start to pay.
Precisely, they'll pay you. That's why those who are working should also be benevolent enough to say, okay, you know what, we're working, we can make 5% contribution towards this fund.
And that also goes to them when they retire.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
it goes to them
So
when
it's
they
not
retire,
just them doing
or
something
it goes
for
to
other
them
people.
if they become unemployed.
Yeah.
Do you understand that? So if you have been working and you've not made any contribution to that fund, and you become unemployed, you cannot be entitled to receive any support from that fund. It's a very simple thing.
Yeah, but it would be compulsory though, wouldn't it? I mean, you would compulsorily take that
it
money.
is a compulsory,
bit like a tax.
Yes, it is compulsory for all employers and all agencies and all companies to do that. But you still find some employers who rather, pay and let the employees decide whether to make the contribution or not. Yes.
But why is it necessary to scrap the ministry? I mean, you're making a very good point, a very good case for social security. But why is it necessary in making that case to scrap the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs? Because the reason I ask you that is that even in the most sophisticated sort of social security welfarist countries, the Nordic countries, I mean, they still have humanitarian affairs departments because things happen that are not predicted, and you still have to deploy resources for that.
Yes, if you have national tragedies.
I mean, why scrap the ministry?
You have hurricanes, you have...
absolutely.
You
so
have
why scrap the Ministry of Human... Why must it be conditional?
But we don't have those natural,
disasters
that
well, we do have.
What are they? The people are the
Well,
disasters.
we've got flooding all the time.
Well, look,
I mean, we get people who are attacked by, a lot of people in IDP camps and so on. I mean...
Yes, I know that happens.
Yeah.
But we also have NEMA and the other agencies that are there for such purposes. So we don't. I'm sure you know that.
The National Emergency
Agency is there.
The emergency agency is quite targeted, isn't it? In what it does.
Targeted for those particular disasters. So you don't need humanitarian. Look, do you really know what's been happening in the past few years? How many people, as ministers, have been removed because they've stolen money or alleged to have stolen money meant for the people?
Yeah, but that's not a reason to close the ministry. It's a reason to prosecute the people who've done it.
But they're not being prosecuted and nothing is... This is Nigeria. It's
well,
not
the
done.
issue ought to be rule of law, not...
It is not...
I mean, you're a lawyer.
I am indeed.
And you're in the National Assembly. You make laws.
It is indeed, but, this particular agency, this particular ministry, has not done well. And we all know it. So what you just keep putting money there, it's like throwing a...
No, I understand that. And I perfectly agree with you that if people are caught stealing money, they ought to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But that doesn't mean that you scrap the ministry necessarily. I mean, I don't see how scrapping the ministry is going to eliminate the probability of fraud in Nigeria. You see what I mean? I'm trying to see the correlation between the two.
No, this is a major outlet. This is a major...
Right.
This ministry has been a problem, for a very long time now. And I think, yes, you might have some argument in saying, don't scrap it, keep it, but all the efforts made, I can tell you that as a senator, how much has been budgeted in the past year or so, and we've been told as senators to contribute to, rather to submit names for beneficiaries, bring 1,000 names, bring 5,000 names, which we do. At the end of the day, nothing happens. The names that we submit to this ministry, they don't receive a penny. They don't receive, it's just all ruse. Nothing happens. So do you continue to support such a ministry?
Budget. No, I understand the point you're making.
So what happens?
Yeah.
You're saying, prosecute them.
What I'm saying is that there is no guarantee that even though you've got a great idea, Nigeria has never been lost on ideas. It's the implementation of ideas that's always been the problem.
Well, I'm not here
country.
to speak for
of course.
that ministry.
You're here to make the case.
I am making the case
for social security.
That people who are vulnerable, people who are in need, people who have nothing to fall back on, should be protected.
And I think that is a very legitimate argument.
Should be protected by the government.
I think that's a very legitimate and a very timely argument, particularly in the context of what is going on in this country today with the cost of living crisis, a lot of people destabilized, I mean, you know, losing their jobs and so on. You've written an open letter to the president. I suppose it's early days to ask you what the response has been.
Well, it's only this last few days, so I'm sure I'll be meeting the president and be discussing this at the right time. But of course, there's another angle to this, which is the housing part of it. Many people don't have
Proper accommodation.
Yeah. So I'm also looking at how we can provide basic accommodation to those who are in dire need of it. You know, and then especially for those who are unemployed, those who are vulnerable, as I said before, but at the point where they become employed, they can leave those houses to those who are coming before them. You know, so just put it this way: housing and some income given to people will help a lot.
But fiscal responsibility would help possibly even more in this country, wouldn't it? Because things would go where they're supposed to go.
Well, you can say that again, but Nigeria is at the point where, you know, there are different issues, you know, that you can blame it on insecurity, for example. You can blame it on mismanagement, corruption. But I believe that for us to start thinking about fiscal discipline as a solution, you know,
it's a much bigger issue.
It's a much bigger issue.
I see what you mean. You're basically saying that this is a crying need, and the imperative is now. It's got to be, something has to be done about it. What is the reaction of your colleagues in the Senate
they are quite
to
happy
your
with
proposal?
this. They are quite happy with this.
To put forward a bill on social security.
Yes. Most of them have called me and they're supporting the bill.
Right.
You know.
So why is it going to take such a? I mean, you can fast track it, can't you? I mean,
it will be done. It will be done. Once we resume, you'll hear about it. It will be read, and then we'll take all the steps that we need to take to make it happen as quickly as possible.
Right.
But I believe, look, as I told you when we were just chatting before we came on air, you know, the National Assembly currently is not a party.
It's not partisan.
It's not partisan. You know,
that's what you say until an issue comes up and they all
No, there are no issues
political
for the
sides.
I don't know of any issues that are partisan that I can say that it has been based on party politics for the past 1 year. You know, we're just thinking about, in fact, from day one, the Senate President said to us, look, once we come in here, let's think about Nigerians. Let's work for Nigerians.
What about things like the devolution of powers, the coming up with a new people's constitution and things like that?
Well, that's an argument.
It gets split along sort of regional, ethnic, political lines.
I'm talking about the masses.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people who don't really care about party politics. You know, what do we need to do to help them?
No, you don't need to convince me. I think you're making a good point, but I'm wondering about your colleagues who don't think the way that you do, apparently.
I know, but most of them are with me on this.
Well, I can tell you this. We're just hearing that your proposal to replace the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs with a National Social Security Agency has been endorsed by a number of civil society organizations. It's just appearing in the newspapers. One of them is the Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria. They agree with you that the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs has failed to address the root causes of poverty and social insecurity in Nigeria. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'm grateful for that. You know, that's exactly what I expect to happen. You know, the fact is that, you know, what I'm trying to achieve is this, Charles. I'm trying to get our government, Nigerian government, to understand that they have a duty, they owe a duty to everybody, particularly the vulnerable. They must make those basic provisions. That's why, like in England, people don't pray. They don't do it. Most people don't talk about.
They just go to the unemployment office.
Yes, they don't talk about God.
I agree.
And that's why you see a British man arrested in India for drugs, for example. The first thing they will do is to try and get hold of whoever that is prosecuting or the police and try to protect that person and then get them back to England, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But what happens when a Nigerian diplomat, you call them, somebody is in custody? They don't want to know. They'll say, you stay there.
Well, you're talking about someone in custody. What about people who are dying in this country?
I'm just saying. So we as a government, we must begin to understand that our duty and our governance, really, governance is about providing for the people. I mean, there's no two way about it. You must provide for the
Absolutely.
people. If you don't provide for the people, there's no need being in government.
Absolutely.
And people must be reassured that they have those basic needs covered.
Absolutely. We've got 2 minutes before we have to end this very interesting conversation. You've also been calling for Aniocha state in your state.
Yeah.
Make the case.
Well, look, Aniocha is made up of 9 local government areas in Delta North, and there are 6 of those local governments are oil and gas producing. So we have the wealth, we have the resources, we have the people.
And I expect you'd like to be the governor of that.
No, I am not. I can say it here. Look, let me tell you that there are 3 federal constituencies.
Right.
One of those federal constituencies is Nwoko Nation. They are very deprived. In fact, most of this oil I'm talking about is from there. You go there, you see all the oil companies in Nigeria. They are there. The chiefs of this world are there. The Sterling Global, they are all there. But there's a lot of devastation, a lot of environmental issues. So I personally think that the governor for this state should come from there, from that particular nation. That's the Nwoko Nation. And they have many capable
Well, that's very
hands.
benevolent.
Of course, yes. I'm not interested in being a governor, but I want the freedom for my people. And our forefathers have been fighting for Aniocha State for the past 50 years. It's the oldest cry for a state. And we have the population, we have the size, we have everything that it takes.
So what's the process that you have to go through now?
We're doing that. We're doing that. We're doing that.
National Assembly?
Yes. I've also discussed with the president, and he is sympathetic towards what we are talking about. And most of my colleagues are also in support of it.
Right.
I think if any state is going to be created in Nigeria, it must be Aniocha State.
Well, I wish you all the very best. And I think you've got some very good ideas there. Certainly around the social security issue. It's an issue that its time is now. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Senator Ned Nwoko is the senator representing Delta North. Good to see you again.
Thank you.